recognize the gentleman from Nebraska, Mr. Flood, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman of Wisconsin. The state of our banking system is not what it used to be post-Dodd-Frank. I represent a district and I live in a state full of outstanding community banks. In the 1980s, there were more than 18,000 banks in the U.S. Today, there are fewer than 5,000 commercial banks. When I started on the Nebraska Unicameral Legislature's Banking Committee, we had over 300 banks, and today we have 137 and dropping. One is consolidation, and the other is a lack of de novo charters when it comes down to the big issues, and I believe both have the same root cause, regulatory burdens. Ms. Romero-Rainey, in your testimony earlier today, you spoke to how inefficient and prescriptive regulations led to further bank consolidation. Can you expound on that point for our benefit?
Absolutely. I think the core theme for me here is, as we look at the community bank business model that is tied directly to relationship lending, we need to look at it through a lens of how do we proportionally manage that risk. And unfortunately, regulation that has been written over the years, 4,000 new pages in the last 2 years, has not been proportionate to the community bank business model. And that comes at a higher cost to community banks, which absolutely contributes to consolidation.
One of the things I love about our banking system in America is that it's diverse. You've got the GSIBs, you've got the regionals, you've got the community banks. And then you look at Europe, and how many banks are calling the shots over in Europe? A couple, a handful? And here we have this diverse system that's the envy of the nation, and we seem to be killing off one of the three legs of the stool. Let's talk about these de novo bank charters. We've seen a staggering drop in the number of these over the years. Congressman Barr's legislation would seek to address that problem, and I am a proud co-sponsor of the bill. Another question to you, Ms. Romero-Rainey. You made a really interesting comment in your testimony that your family's community bank, Sentinel, would not have been chartered today given the regulatory environment. Which specific barriers do you feel would have been most challenging to chartering a new bank de novo with the circumstances you had when your family bank started?
First and foremost, the minimum amount of capital. As we think about what is required, again, it's a one-size-fits-all approach, and so that has to be solved for immediately, especially as we look at access to capital in rural areas.
Very good. Mr. Kennedy, in your testimony, you touched on the importance of allowing community banks to innovate and use technology to confront some of the barriers posed by the regulatory burdens. I totally agree. And I would be fearful if I were running a community bank of getting into bed with a third-party vendor that could take me a place where my license could be suspended. But how can technology help smaller institutions face the challenges posed by the regulatory burdens? What do you think of that?
Well, I think technology can level the playing field and has for the last 20 years, and will continue to do that. And there's a lot of different meanings to the word fintech, as I think the commissioner talked about earlier. We've got to be innovative, and the regulatory agencies have to understand that and give the banking community space to do that.
Do you think the regulators of community banks are as maybe open-minded to some of the fintech possibilities as maybe the large GSIBs with their regulators?
I think they are. I'm not sure that the leadership in Washington of late, particularly the last 4 years, has allowed them to be.
Very fair.
But I urge in my remarks, also in my written testimony, that we give the regulatory folks an opportunity, fund them better, give them the opportunity to understand and work side by side with banks as we innovate.
Ms. Marshall, appreciate seeing you again this week. A lot of banks in my home state have gone from an OCC charter to a state charter. Are you seeing that in Arkansas as well?
Absolutely. Yes, sir. There's only 7 state chartered banks and 7 national banks chartered in Arkansas. And so almost 90% of our banks are state chartered. That's happened fairly recently over the last few years.
Why is that?
I will say it's our relationship to those institutions, our knowledge of the local communities, our accessibility, our willingness to partner with them in a way that it's not inappropriate, but best suited for both organizations to maintain that healthy, vibrant community banking sector.
Do you think the OCC wants a larger bank to regulate? Do they want to be in the space of community banks?
I wouldn't be able to speak to what the OCC would or would not want. I can just assure you that our banks are pleased with the relationship they have with the state.
Thank you very much. I yield back.
Gentlemen.